How inbred is King Charles III? Is King Charles England's most inbred monarch? Throughout history, royalty has often engaged in frequent intermarriage, leading to significant levels of inbreeding. Notably, Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip were cousins, prompting questions about the extent of King Charles's own inbreeding. While it's widely known in the UK that King Charles has familial ties that could be characterized as inbred due to his parents' close relation, the precise degree of his inbreeding has not been publicly disclosed to this day. In this video, we will delve into the historical records and uncover the true extent of King Charles's inbreeding, and the revelations are quite astonishing. Whether you're into horrible histories or whether you despite Queen Camilla, this video is for you. Turns out, there's some royal secrets still waiting to be revealed. How inbred is King Charles III? It turns out that assessing the level of inbreeding in individuals is a topic of considerable interest, and there is a wealth of readily available guidance online for those interested. However, I'll simplify the process here. Let's explore how to determine the degree of inbreeding in an individual using a concept known as the coefficient of consanguinity, or consanguinity coefficient. This scale ranges from 0, indicating minimal inbreeding, to 1, representing the maximum possible inbreeding. Yet, achieving a coefficient of 1 is biologically impossible, since it would involve a person having a child with themselves, a feat even royalty cannot accomplish, at least not as of yet. However, there are other relationships where inbreeding is possible, unfortunately. For instance, if two full siblings were to have a child together, despite being prohibited in many countries, their child's consanguinity coefficient would be approximately 0.25 or 25%. Charles II of Spain, for instance, had a consanguinity coefficient of 0.25, even though his parents were not full siblings. This is because the consanguinity coefficient factors in all the inbreeding within a person's ancestral lineage, and these influences accumulate over generations. For example, if someone were to have a child with their first cousin, that child's consanguinity coefficient would be 0.7 or 7%. However, if that child subsequently had a child with their own first cousin, this would elevate the consanguinity to around 11%. The table below elucidates the basic consanguinity coefficients for specific relationships based on historical data and documented cases of inbreeding. 0.25, 25%. Children born to full siblings. 0.125, 12.5%. Children born to half siblings. 0.0625, 6.25%. Children born to first cousins. 0.03125, 3.125%. Children born to second cousins. This analysis provides insight into the methodology of determining inbreeding levels based on historical data and helps us better understand its implications in royal lineages and beyond. The rationale for applying this analysis to King Charles is rather straightforward. Throughout history, royalty, from the times of Tutankhamun to the modern era, has frequently resorted to inbreeding. This practice persisted mainly because, until relatively recently, the ideal choice of a consort, whether a queen or a prince, was expected to hail from royalty, or at least the aristocracy. Even though the late Princess Diana wasn't of royal lineage, she was the daughter of an earl, and intriguingly, a distant cousin of King Charles. The current queen consort, Camilla, is a secret cousin to King Charles. How did his historical inbreeding relationships influence him? Considering this, it's crucial to examine the degree of King Charles's inbreeding, especially given his parents' close kinship. Fortunately, as king, tracing his family tree is a relatively straightforward task, although it encompasses a vast and complex genealogy. Yet, for an accurate assessment of King Charles's genuine inbreeding, we must consider the inbreeding of all his known ancestors. This proves challenging, as we can trace his direct lineage back to William the Conqueror in 1066 and even further beyond, with each step complicating the task due to the historical penchant for royal marriages between cousins, aunts, and uncles. In this video, we shall focus our analysis on King Charles's ancestors up to his great-great-grandfather, King Edward VII. This selection is deliberate, as King Edward VII is notably recognized as an inbred monarch, given that his parents, Queen Victoria and Prince Albert, were first cousins. Examining Queen Victoria's lineage, we discover that her own inbreeding was not particularly significant. Our journey thus commences with Edward VII, the first prominent figure in King Charles's genealogy to experience inbreeding. Although Edward VII exhibited peculiar behaviors during his reign, it's important to clarify that these traits cannot be attributed solely to his inbreeding. Amidst tales of hosting extravagant 24-course banquets, indulging in daily bottles of complimentary wine, and the clandestine revelation of fathering Queen Camilla's grandmother at the ripe age of 60, King Edward VII was anything but a typical Victorian monarch. Now, turning our attention to his inbreeding, it's worth noting that Edward VII's consanguinity coefficient is approximately 0.7 or 7%, making the calculation more comprehensible. Fortunately, the Windsors had a stroke of fortune in this regard, as Edward VII's marriage to Danish Princess Alexandra proved to be a distant and scarcely related union. In fact, their connection was so remote that quantifying it becomes a moot point since their consanguinity coefficient hovers at 0%. Princess Alexandra, for her part, had very minimal inbreeding. Her parents were second cousins, linked through their great-grandmothers, rendering her consanguinity coefficient at a mere 0.3%. This near absence of inbreeding in Alexandra and Edward's lineage results in their offspring inheriting an exceptionally low consanguinity coefficient, or inbreeding level. Calculating this value involves finding the midpoint between both parents' inbreeding levels. For instance, their son, George V, would possess a consanguinity coefficient of approximately 0.55%, a notably low figure given the historical context. However, the plot thickens as we delve further into the family tree. George V, despite his marriage to a German princess, Mary of Teck, wasn't truly German. Mary was raised in England due to her mother, Adelaide of Cambridge, who happened to be a cousin of Queen Victoria. This familial connection is pivotal since it makes Mary of Teck a first cousin once removed from Queen Victoria, and, by extension, a second cousin to Edward VII, who would become her father-in-law. The intricacies of royal family intermarriage, it seems, can indeed be perplexing. George V's connection with Mary of Teck was that of second cousins once removed, resulting in a consanguinity coefficient of approximately 0.16 or 2%. Remarkably low by royal standards, especially when considering that George V himself had an inbreeding level of around 5%. Consequently, any children born to George V and Mary of Teck would inherit an inbreeding level that lies between their respective values, estimated at around 3%. This equates to a notably low inbreeding level for their sons, Edward VII, who later abdicated the throne to Mary Wallis Simpson, and George VI, the father of Queen Elizabeth II, hovering at approximately 2% to 3%. In this context, it becomes clear that inbreeding cannot be blamed for Edward VII's unconventional behavior. George VI's marital choice, opting for Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon, the future Queen Mother, was seen as unconventional for a royal heir apparent. This arose from Elizabeth's aristocratic lineage as the daughter of a Scottish earl. The significance of this decision lies in the fact that George and Elizabeth shared no blood relations. Consequently, their daughters, Princesses Elizabeth and Margaret, had virtually no inbreeding, possessing a mere 1% consanguinity coefficient. It turns out that our late Queen Elizabeth II was one of the least inbred monarchs to have ever ruled over England. However, her marriage to Prince Philip, formerly Prince Philip of Greece and Denmark, adds a layer of complexity. Understanding this intricate web of relationships is crucial in grasping the extent of King Charles's inbreeding. Unlike Queen Elizabeth II, Prince Philip was regrettably inbred due to his great-grandparents, and unfortunately, this inbreeding occurred through multiple lines. For instance, Prince Philip's mother resulted from a first-cousin marriage, as her grandfathers were brothers. Inbreeding also manifested through another line, with Prince Philip's other great-grandfather, King Christian IX of Denmark, serving as an uncle-in-law to Prince Philip's great-grandmother, Princess Alice of the United Kingdom. In sum, Prince Philip's inbreeding is somewhat evident, reflected in a consanguinity coefficient of approximately 6%, mirroring the extent seen in Edward VII, who was the son of a first-cousin relationship. To delve into an even more convoluted aspect, we must consider the union of an inbred individual like Prince Philip with a non-inbred individual like Queen Elizabeth. One might assume their children would be free from inbreeding concerns, but this is not the case. The complexity arises from the fact that, as many are aware, Prince Philip and Queen Elizabeth II were related. According to the royal family's website, Philip and Queen Elizabeth are considered third cousins. Philip's great-grandmother, Princess Alice, was the sister of Queen Elizabeth's great-grandfather, King Edward VII, establishing them as third cousins. However, the complications do not end there. European royal intermarriages have been intricate since the time of Queen Victoria. In this context, Prince Philip and Queen Elizabeth are related through yet another line. Grandfather of King George of Greece was the brother of Princess Alexandra, who was Edward VII's wife, and thus she is the great-grandmother of Queen Elizabeth. Consequently, Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip are both second cousins and third cousins to each other, resulting in a complex web of inbreeding within the British royal family. So, what are the implications of all this intricate lineage analysis on King Charles's level of inbreeding? To arrive at a base value, we need to find a midpoint between Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip's inbreeding levels. This midway point between 1% and 7% would equate to 4%. However, the familial ties between Prince Philip and Queen Elizabeth introduce another layer of complexity. Their second cousin relationship contributes an additional 6% of inbreeding, and the third cousin relationship brings about another 3% of inbreeding. This signifies that King Charles's inbreeding level cannot be merely 4% because his parents shared multiple interrelated connections. With these numerous lines of relationship, we must consider them as a cumulative enhancement to the inbreeding levels in their offspring. Therefore, at a foundational level, we combine the 6% from the second cousin relationship with the 3% from the third cousin relationship, yielding a total inbreeding level of about 9%. Yet, when examining the parents' genealogy, we can detect some residual traces of inbreeding in Prince Philip. As a rough estimate, King Charles's consanguinity coefficient, or his level of inbreeding, falls within a range of 9 to 13%. For precision, it hovers just over 10%. In essence, this comprehensive analysis unveils the extent of King Charles's inbreeding. We'd like to express our gratitude to all of you for watching this video. Delving into the intricate historical web of King Charles's lineage was a fascinating endeavor, prompting us to contemplate how his level of inbreeding compares to other English and British monarchs. If you find the idea of such a video appealing, please let us know in the comments below. Like, share, and subscribe to the channel to update videos on your favorite topics. Goodbye, and see you again in the next videos.